Well, I'm ready. Whenever you are.
I'm Euro.
I'm Chris, and this is Fork Bomb. Thursday, May 7th, 2020. Episode 29, PC Emulators. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, Euro. How are you?
Good. See, we had to do the switcheroo this time. That's what we do on episodes 29.
On prime number episodes, I guess. New tradition.
Hope we remember next time. But anyway, so this was a really fun project. I really enjoyed getting around to playing with PC emulators. So first of all, I want to say thanks for introducing me to that. I was stuck with the notion that VirtualBox and console emulators and DOSBox that was it. But then PCem, you told me about PCem, and that kind of opened up this whole other world.
So we should. Well, first of all, I'm glad you had such a good time. I certainly did too. I have been obsessed with this since I found it, and I guess we should give some background on what it is and how it compares to your regular run-of-the-mill emulators.
Right.
Are we going to assume no knowledge of virtual machines when we explain this, or?
We should assume no knowledge. So we may have people that have never used a virtual machine before.
It's a computer inside of a computer. It's software acting like hardware.
And so that actually it's interesting because a lot of people use emulators, and you're absolutely right. It is software emulating hardware. So you can basically emulate whatever the software is written to do. So a lot of the famous ones are console ones. SNES 9X for Super Nintendo, FCE for NES, and a bunch of other systems. Pico for Sega. So you have those emulators, and those are the ones that I've actually used for a long time now. But then you have the emulators that actually emulate x86 architecture. A very famous one is DOSBox, and people they're using DOSBox to run their old games on newer systems, so that way they don't have to buy the machine, the metal, as people say, the actual machines. They can actually emulate this on their Windows 10 machines or their Linux machines, etc., Mac, it's great because it allows you to slow down the processor so you can run more speed sensitive games. You can install operating systems that are no longer supported. So there's a whole range of things that you can do with emulators.
Can we also
and
cover,
it's also used for testing.
Can we also cover VirtualBox and VMware and Hyper-V, just for sake of comparison?
Yes, and we might as well throw parallels in there. And
yeah. So those are all general purpose hypervisors. They also emulate x86 systems. You can run whatever operating system you want on it. You can run Windows inside of Linux, Linux inside of Windows, OpenBSD, and whatever else you can run those hypervisors on. But they are general purpose emulators. They share a lot of. They'll share as much of the host system as they can for speed optimization, and their focus is on performance. And when it comes to the type of hardware that they emulate, they ideally have devices that know they are being virtualized, like using the VirtIO disk controller or the VirtIO network adapter, and they can only emulate one or two other actual cards, which is considered a slower mode. But what we played with emulates actual hardware and a huge range of it.
And you know what was really fun, and it even emulates the BIOS that this hardware is running off of, and so it was really fun to play around with the BIOS settings, play around with different chipsets, and play around with different processors and processor speeds, and different configurations. One of the things that I really enjoyed about PCM is that not only can you change processors, you can change video cards, you can change video card memory, you can add in a freaking Voodoo if you wanted to, and emulate 3D Glide, which actually works really, really well. You can emulate different sound cards. I was emulating the Sound Blaster A32. You can choose Sound Blaster 16, Sound Blaster Pro, Sound Blaster 2. I think you emulated. Didn't you try the Gravis Ultrasound and things like that?
I did.
Yeah.
In fact, I have the PCEM status page up now. These are the machines that it emulates. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll read 5 off of each category. It goes all the way back to the 8088s, so the first PCs. It does the IBM PC, IBM PC Junior, IBM XT. You can do Tandy 1000s. You can do AMI XT clones. There's the 8086, which are Amstrad PCs, Sinclair PCs, other Tandys. There's 286s. You can do the old Commodore PCs. You can do IBM AT, IBM XT, 286, IBM PS2s.
That's a lot more than 5.
I said 5 per category. So the
per
categories
category.
are the processor types.
Continue, sir.
There's the 386 SX and DX. There you have compact desk pros, more IBM PS2s. There's a Packard Bell Legend in there. You can do 486s, the 486 AMI or AMI 486 clone. You can do an Award SAS 496, 497, another Packard Bell PB410A. You can even go up to early Pentiums. I think there's Pentium 1s and goes up to a Pentium 2 and a K62 something, right?
I forgot the last K6. I was successful at emulating a Pentium 2 300 megahertz. That was a challenge. I did run it on a 6-core 6850 K processor. So and it was clocked at 4 gigahertz, and it was struggling to emulate the Pentium 2 300. So there was that, but yeah, I was able to run that, and that was the max I could do before things started falling apart. So I think the fastest that I saw on there was, I don't know if it was a Pentium 2 350, or there might have been a Celeron 400, something like that. But yeah, it's a wide range.
Yeah, it can emulate a huge range of processors, everything down to the 8080. But you can also do things like the 486DX2, 486DX4, the Pentium Overdrive 83 megahertz. It does a huge range of graphics cards, including, like you mentioned, Voodoo graphics cards, CGA, EGA.
The Hercules.
Oak, yep. Phoenix, yeah, Hercules.
Trident S3s.
It does.
Diamond Stealths.
It does pretty much all the Sound Blasters except for the AW64, but it does have all 32. It does the Gravis Ultrasound, which I played with and got working. Yeah.
Yep, various hard disk controllers, CD-ROM drives, floppy drives, you name it. Even zip drives are emulated on there, so so you can have fun with that. Network works when you get it to work, but it wasn't too bad. A large array of things. Then you can full screen it, make your whole desktop look like it's a 8088 if you wanted to, or 8086. It's really fun. It's incredibly fun. So one of the things that and actually you were mentioning AMI and Award and things like that. So those are BIOS. Those are different BIOS, and it was really fun to see. Well, so when I grew up, or as I was, I guess I'm still growing up, right? So as when I was younger, I was using the AMI BIOS quite often, but I haven't used AMI BIOS since probably back in high school, I think I switched over to using awards, and I hadn't used AMI BIOS in forever. And recently now with this, I was able to play with AMI BIOS again, and I just a flood of memories came back playing around with that when I was a kid, getting frustrated at the hard drive types and things like that. But it was fun. It was definitely fun. Going through that exact same menu. I hadn't seen that screen in years and years. So you get the full experience. It's not just you install DOS on a generic machine. You actually install DOS on that machine.
And it
So
runs
with
at the
ISA
speed
cards
of
and
that
everything.
machine.
That's right. You can do that machine. So I felt a little bit like Phil on Phil's computer lab. I was over there playing around and benchmarking stuff. By the way, shout out to Phil. Thank you very much for those benchmarks on your site. They were really helpful. I did get to play around with them, and I tested different processors at the same speed. I tested a 386DX, 33 megahertz, against a 486SX and a 46DX, 33 megahertz. By the way, SX and DX had absolutely no difference in those benchmarks, in case you guys are wondering. But a 486DX, 33 megahertz versus a 66 megahertz actually did double the speed on most benchmarks. So that was really neat to see. I thought it wouldn't be double that, but anyway, I'm jumping ahead. I don't want to jump ahead. Just want to let people know that awards and AMI, those are all different kinds of BIOS that you can play around with when you start up your computer, and hit that Del key and set up your hard drives and things like that.
So you were saying that it emulates the BIOS of each machine. That's not quite true. It runs the actual BIOS because we had to download the BIOS images for it to work. So it emulates the hardware, and that emulated hardware is running the actual BIOS.
Sure, true. Yeah, emulating the hardware. You're absolutely right. We did have to download a ROM pack and then set it up in the ROMs directory. Pretty easy. Nothing major there. One thing is, if you're learning the Linux version, I had to compile it. So just be comfortable with the make command and all that stuff. In Windows, they already prepackage it for you. It's already precompiled, so you just install it like any other application, and then you just put the ROMs in the ROM folder. So there is that.
So did
Go
we
ahead.
even? So we've been talking about PCEM, but you played with a fork of it as well.
I did. So I did play around PCM, but I also played around with a fork of it called 86 box, and I didn't know 86 box existed either. But a guy named Michael Richmond on Facebook, he linked to it, and I was curious, and I set it up. And actually, I prefer 86 box over PCM. There just seems to be more options to choose from. More speeds are available. I think that Pentium 2 that I was talking about earlier is available on 86 box. Only there was different versions of the Pentium 2 as well. So yeah, that was neat. So I just prefer 86 box. I did end up downloading the 86 manager, or the 86 box manager, which gives you that front screen where you can set up your different different PCs with different configurations. Otherwise, 86 box just runs, and you just have the option of running one machine. And you just have to do everything through the configuration menu, and you don't get a screen to select your machine or save different machines. So 86 box manager, highly recommended. So yeah, thanks Michael for that. I was able to successfully test a Windows 98 machine with Pentium 2. I basically tried to do the best settings that I could before my machine would crap out, due to all the the high settings and everything. And I was able to set up a machine with Voodoo, I believe it's a Voodoo 2, 8 megabyte. You can actually, and I don't know if you could do this with PCEM, I didn't look into it, but with 86 box, you can actually SLI Voodoo 2s. So I thought that was really neat that you
That
could
is
do
neat.
that. Yeah.
I don't think you can do that with PCEM.
Okay. Yeah, there's the option on 86 box. So I didn't try SLI. I want to. But I did try I did try benchmarks. So I installed 3D Mark 2000, and then I was wondering if, because you see, as I was using the my computer and I would increase the speed, my performance just using it was, it wasn't like, it wasn't unstable unless you go really crazy with the speeds, but it was to the point where things get wonky, or applications would close, or the whole thing would freeze. Um, so I thought, okay, I have my Pentium 2 300. It was stable there, and I thought that if I lowered the speed of the processor down to like a 266 or a 233, that I would actually get better performance on 3D Mark, and that wasn't true. so so it actually speed did make a difference. It made a pretty big difference actually. So the faster you can get your processor, the better. So yeah, 3D Mark 2000 proved that. And yeah, as I was saying before about the 486 and things like that, I was able to test different chips. You could test it from motherboards too. I think you tested one, right, Chris? You tested the same motherboard, the same chip with different motherboards, something like that, or
Yeah.
yeah.
I did same chip, separate motherboards, and the DOS 3D benchmark was exactly the same. So I don't think the motherboard made any difference there.
Different.
So that might be one of the downsides of emulation, in that it might not be it might not be so accurate that it would affect those results, because you would think in real life that they would at least be somewhat different, but it was exactly the same.
Yeah, and I had that same situation with the 46SX and the 46DX. Both the same speed, but they were both exactly the same. So that, I thought that was interesting. Things did get much more interesting when I tested a 386 versus 46, same speed. Um, there's a huge difference between a 46 and a 386. I mean, according to these benchmarks, not just, forget the hardware. That's, of course, that's important, but I'm just talking about run the exact same benchmark, and there's benchmarks one that won't run. Um, most likely due to missing items on the, missing components on the 46 the 386 versus 46. Um, I don't know if there was a, well, the FPU, I was using a 387, so that shouldn't have been an issue. Anyway, there was some benchmarks that wouldn't run, other benchmarks that ran incredibly slow, and so that was just, it was just really interesting. You went down from like 20 frames per second down to 9 frames per second. Same speed, 33 megahertz, but you just have a completely different chip. So I thought that was really interesting. And like I said, from using the same 486 33 megahertz to 66 megahertz, practically doubled the speed. And so I'm used to nowadays, when you increase the speed, it actually marginally increases things. It doesn't double it unless just some application scales incredibly well. But in this case, everything doubled in DOS. And I think, didn't you have an issue with Duke playing at 33 megahertz? It was almost unplayable.
It was pretty slow, yeah.
Yeah. So we had to crank it up to 66 megahertz, and then it was okay. So yeah, yeah,
So
that was pretty much it.
it sounds like you did a lot of benchmarking. What else did you do?
Benchmarking. I installed Windows NT. I haven't installed Windows NT in a long time, so I installed Windows NT 4.0 workstation. That's the one that the interface looks like Windows 95. It's also notorious for not running applications that are designed for Windows 95. Basically, if it's not for NT, forget it. So there's that. I had some driver issues. My S3 Verge card wouldn't display the proper colors. I was stuck at 16 color mode, and I had some network driver issues. But it all went away when I installed Windows 95. I think I was using OSR 2. It's the OEM version, the one that comes with Internet Explorer 3. So yeah, that helped. I was able to find the drivers for that. There's that incredible website that you shared, Chris. It was really good. Had everything.
WinWorld PC?
Yeah, WinWorld PC. That was awesome. That had boot disks. different operating systems, DOS operating systems, IBM stuff, a lot actually. There's a great resource for this. Between that and archive.org, you can definitely find a lot of software for your PC needs for back then. What about you, Chris? What did you do?
First thing I did was set up a Windows 3.1 machine and try to as closely mimic my childhood setup as possible. So that was I had a Packard Bell 486DX2 when I was growing up, so what I ended up doing was a AMI 486 clone DX266, 8 megabytes of RAM, 500 megabyte hard drive, installed Windows 3.1, installed the Best of Microsoft Entertainment Pack, played some Ski Free, set up Print Shop Deluxe, pretend I was Clint from LGR and made some cool crab, some cool crab letterheads. I played with Photoshop 3.0 and did some 90s era photo editing in glorious 256 colors. I learned how to install Windows 3.1 video drivers because I never knew how to do it. So now I know how. That's why it's fun to play with this stuff, because you can experience how it actually worked. Let's see, what else did I do? I decided to learn how to... I wanted to hear the Gravis ultrasound in all of its glory, so I learned how to set that up in DOS, played with the MIDI jukebox. I set up a Windows 95 machine on a Pentium 166, tested the Voodoo card, ran Unreal Gold. It worked really well. And I also set up an IBM PC Junior, tested out IBM King's Quest, not Sierra King's Quest, but IBM King's Quest, the first one.
Haha.
And I also set up an IBM XT286, and that was really interesting because we're used to we're used to the easy life. You just plug in your hard drive and your BIOS knows what to do. It just auto detects things. Not here. In fact, you don't even have the BIOS set up software in the motherboard. You have to put in a floppy that has your IBM diagnostic utilities or your third-party G setup disk, and that's how you configure the BIOS. So there you have to tell it which type of hard drive you have, and it, whether it be a Type 1 to Type 47, and that matches up with the number of cylinders and heads and
good old Type 1 10 megabyte.
And then I learned about drive controllers, because now we're used to drive controllers being built onto the drive. Not in the 286 days. You have to install a separate drive controller. And then, once you have those two and the right combination of the drive and the drive controller, and you set the right incantations, then it sees that you have a hard drive. I guess the only thing that I really couldn't experience was doing a low-level format, because there is no physical disk to deal with, just a disk image.
Right.
I tried to get MTCP working, but I couldn't quite get DHCP to work on the 286. I'll have that figured out later. And I decided to try some clock speed dependent games like Defender. And sure enough, they run at the proper speed, which is one thing I wanted to mention. Where most virtualization focuses on speed and performance, this focuses on accuracy. That's why you need a 4 gigahertz CPU to emulate a 166 megahertz Pentium.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many cores you have, because you're emulating a single core processor. Single core. So you only use one of your host cores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does it incredibly well, though. But absolutely, it doesn't really matter how many cores you have. So I'm sitting here thinking about the question. What is better? Is it better to emulate, or is it better to have the physical? And there's some things that you're still missing when you're doing emulation. For example, I distinctly remember dip switches
Oh
on the
yeah,
motherboard, and not just dip switches, but the actual not the little blue with the white, and then you would use your fingernail or whatever to move it up and down. But I'm talking about jumpers as well. So you're missing that. So there is that one aspect that I was thinking about as I was playing around with the emulator. There's the whole touchy feely thing, and I do like to have the hardware with me. So there is that. There is that aspect of I still prefer to use it on actual hardware. However, just the sheer amount of things you could test out in emulation, it's fantastic. And if I were to get an older machine, I would know exactly what to do because I've already tested it out in emulation. So there is that. I mean, and it is as close as you're gonna get to the actual machine. You're absolutely right about the accuracy. It's very accurate, and down to we even noticed a flicker when you chose the CGA card.
yeah.
Yeah, so it really is very very accurate. You started the machine, the first thing you see is the BIOS of the video card. I had a Trident 1 MB, and that would
Right.
show up. So that was really neat too. You see the memory countdown. It says to press Del to go to the BIOS screen. I mean, it is like the real thing, to the best that it can be. So yeah, I mean, other than missing out on low level formats, dip switches, jumper settings, things like that, and the touchy feely stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's as close as you're gonna get to having those to having those machines. And also, there are those ridiculous prices that are out there right now to buy a 386 and 46 machine on eBay. So this is a much cheaper alternative.
You've made every point that I wanted to. I do agree with you on if you do want to set up a physical machine, this is a great way to test things out and learn how to use it to get a sense of how fast or slow things will be.
Right.
So yeah, I think you can even emulate the turbo button on some motherboards.
I did see it on the I think there was a setting on 86 box for turbo and normal, and I think we also saw it on the 286 AMI BIOS. There was a turbo and a normal, and then none for some reason. So yeah, absolutely. You can turn on cache. you can turn that
Cache.
on and off and things like that. So absolutely, I much prefer it over 86. I'm sorry, over DOSBox. I mean, well, no, let me take that back. DOSBox has its unique features. I mean, if you just want to play games and you don't want to deal with anything else, DOSBox is for you. I mean, it's gonna do the best. It's gonna be the best at that. But if you want to get an actual feel for what it was really like and what it's like to actually have that hardware but without having it, this is definitely the way to go. If I were gonna build a DOS machine, I don't think I would go DOSBox, just because now I know I have this, and I would just rather use this instead. I want to see the megahertz. This is part of it. It's part of me running a game. Is I want to see the Energy Star logo on the top right. Things like that. This is part of the whole starting up my Wolfenstein 3D and things like that. So
Here's all good points. Here's some things you can do just because it is an emulator, though. Some of it is similar to what you can do with DOSBox, some of it isn't. Similar to DOSBox, you can map an actual joystick to the emulated PC joystick. So if you have a PS4 controller and you want to use it to play TIE Fighter in PCEM, you can do it. One issue, though, that was a challenge that we both solved in different ways was how to get files onto the emulated
yes,
machines.
absolutely.
Do you want to talk about your way first?
So I was running it on Windows. For some reason, my network would not see my local network. When I checked, my IP was a completely different range. It assigned it a 10 IP range instead of a 192. I tried to change it, then it wouldn't work, so I just left it at 10 dot. And but it was able to see when I had an FTP server running, and that was running at 192. So go figure. So I was able to FTP. So I would have an FTP server running on my host machine, and then I would run an early version of FileZilla on the Windows 95 or 98 box, and I was able to FTP files back and forth. So that's how I got games and different programs to run. I did have some CDs, so and you can use your CD-ROM drive if you happen to have one. You can use that, and it'll emulate it. It'll use it. It'll use the CD drive's resources on the machine itself, on the emulated machine. But there was some other files that I didn't really feel like burning to disk or anything like that. So I would just either FTP over, and do that. Actually, at one point I installed daemon tools because I remembered that I was doing that when I was younger, and then I was like, what am I doing? I could just select the image and have it run that way. So, but yeah, I do remember distinctly copying over an ISO image to my emulated machine and then running daemon tools to run it. So you can do that if you wanted to. It's not going to stop you.
Experience.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not going to stop you from doing that. But yeah. So that's how you can do it. You can either emulate the CD drive, and then just run your images from there, or if you have individual files, then I would FTP it over. So, but you had a different experience.
Yeah. So I had a hard time getting networking working. I eventually did. There's two ways of getting networking going, either via PCAP, which uses packet capture, or some antiquated technology called Slurp. I don't know how it works. I just know it somehow emulates a modem and
it's magic.
Shoehorns the packets in that way. Someone leave a comment and tell us. Honestly, no one has, besides Jamie, no one has ever left a comment.
Come on, somebody tell us how Slurp works.
Yes, please.
So we don't have to look it up.
And so my way of getting files onto it was an operating system independent way, since it's using just standard disk images .img files. First, I would mount the partitions in those image files onto my local file system on my host as a loopback device. And that way, I was able to directly copy the whatever software and files I had onto the virtual machine's hard drive. Then I would unmount it, turn the machine back on, and my files were there. And so this worked for everything that I ran, including the 286.
That's great. Yeah, I guess you can mount the actual images of the hard drive and just copy files in there. So, yep. So that's another way of doing it.
Your way is better in that you don't have to turn the machine off.
Yeah, but I think it takes longer. So there is that. I remember it taking me a while to FTP a 600 megabyte CD drive, a CD-ROM. Yeah, and then I learned that I didn't have to do that.
I did try.
But,
the host CD mode for the CD-ROM, where it'll use your physical CD drive and a physical CD, and that broke things. It slowed it down, locked it up. So, I would not recommend that.
What put a big smile on my face was when I was playing. I put on Quake, GL Quake. Okay, so that's the Glide version of Quake. And I put that on, and I was expecting all kinds of problems, and it fired up immediately. No issues whatsoever. First try, I was playing Quake 1, GL Quake, no issues whatsoever, and it was great.
Nice.
That put a smile to my face. I was like, this is it. This is awesome. And yeah, absolutely no problems. As a matter of fact, when I started up GL Quake, the first thing that came up was the 3DFX logo.
Nice.
Which definitely put a smile on my face. So that was neat. Those were all positive experiences. Actually very, very little negative. Sometimes I would have the machine lock up. I had issues getting a 286 25 megahertz. That already sounds like an issue. But I wanted to take it to extreme. So 286, 25 megahertz AMI BIOS, and I think I was just using the wrong hard drive. I had set it to Type 47, which is a custom type. I set the heads, the cylinders, and the sectors, and it was all set to correctly. But for some reason, it just wouldn't start up. It would just hang there. So I think it might have been the boot image that I was using. But yeah, that's a very minor complaint. I saw how you did it, and it seemed to work much better by using the MFM controller. So I'll definitely be trying that. Next time, probably different boot image too. Yeah, my goal was to run the benchmarks that Phil has on a 286, 386, and a 486 of the same speed, and I just wanted to see the differences there. So thought that would be fun. Yeah, that's Oh, you know what would be really fun? What if we could run SNES 9X within Windows 98,
Oh
emulating
yeah.
Windows 98?
Oh, Nesticle. Remember Nesticle?
Yes, yes. Or the DOS, the DOS one, right? That was the DOS one? No, that was ZNES. Never mind. The one that had the hand, instead of a
Yeah, yeah.
mouse cursor. Yeah, the hand. Yeah, yeah. That'd be really neat, to run an emulator inside an emulator.
We
It's like
should.
emulatorception.
What else do you want to do with it in the future?
I want to run an emulator inside an emulator. Yeah. Besides benchmarking and things, you know what? You know how we've always been talking about setting up the Novell network and seeing how that works.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to do it on the actual hardware that they had back then. So this might be something fun to try.
I'm not sure how. At least with Slurp, you might have to do that through the WinPCAP
The
thing
the PCAP.
because you don't
Yeah,
have much
maybe.
control over the networking environment. It's very very limited.
Hmm.
Like for example, ping doesn't even work.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a black box to me. I mean, so I was able to get websites to work. I mean, questionably because I'm running Internet Explorer 3, and that's just terrible when running anything. But yeah, I was able to get out to the internet and use my FTP and everything. So I was able to do that. But then yeah, I had some of that wonkiness, like you're saying. So I guess we'll just have to see. Very little options too that you could tune on Slurp, like any. I don't think I could modify anything, so it just kind of works. But yeah, setting different settings might be difficult. Um, I don't know. Anything that you're planning to do with it?
I want to play with Xenix. I want to try. I want to try to set up a very early version of Slackware on a 486. See if I can get a desktop running there. And
I wanted to ask how your Ubuntu setup went. Ubuntu 4.10.
oh, I wasn't trying to install it. I was just trying to get a live CD booted just to see what it would give me for the network information. But I couldn't quite get it up. I got it as far as the terminal, but then the terminal wouldn't accept any keystrokes, so I just gave up.
Hmm. Okay. So the ultimate question: has your 486DX266 itch been scratched?
um, as far as it can be with emulation, yes.
Okay.
But I had all of the fun of setting it up, and I never enjoy using these machines. I only enjoy setting them up. Once they're set up, I don't touch them again. I typically throw them away. I've thrown physical machines away. So
Hmm.
start at the hay machine there. But with this, I can just delete the VM. There's no waste.
No waste. By the way, Chris, you know what we need to do? We need to see if we can completely um, do everything that we do on our physical machines. So this would include setting up MTCP and playing our DOS games through the network. Same. Everything's the same how we do it with our regular machines.
We won't be able to do IPX through these because of Slurp.
Oh, that's right.
But we can do TCP/IP games.
Yeah, but IPX is what we use most
Yep.
of the time. Descent, Doom, all that. Not Doom. I mean, Did we do Doom with that? I don't know. Duke. There you go.
I do
Blood.
I do like the idea though.
Yeah, I think that'd be neat. I mean, just to see if it's possible, why not?
Right.
Uh, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. So I'd love to hear what people are gonna, comment and say about it, and if they've played around with it or they haven't played around with it, if they thought this was informational, if this was good for them. Oh, Encarta.
Oh
I got to use Encarta.
Yeah, I installed an Encarta 94, and I looked up articles about Bill Clinton and Sally Ride.
And I installed Encarta 97 and realized that for some reason my disk and probably all of Encarta 97 just had 30,000 articles. And I was like, that can't be right. But I couldn't find any more than 30,000 articles. So yeah, that was interesting. So then I typed in Intel Corp, wanting to learn about the chips that I was using, and I couldn't find Intel Corp. So that was kind of strange because I could have sworn I had Encarta 96 back when I was a kid, and I remember looking up Intel and things like that. So or maybe I don't know. You know what? I don't know. That's just it's weird. It's maybe that's that Mandela effect, where I thought I looked up Intel and maybe I didn't. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting that wasn't there. But yeah, that was really fun. I hadn't installed Encarta in forever, so installing it was fun. And then using it.
It was a multimedia experience.
Didn't you play around with Carmen Sandiego?
I played around with Where in Space is Carmen Sandiego.
We're in Space, yeah. We're in Space. I actually like that one a lot. We're in Space, We're in Time, and actually We're in the USA was one of my favorites too.
Oh so, no, mine was Where in Time. That's right.
Yeah, Where in Time actually it was released earlier than Where in Space. Yeah, that sounds right. So the graphics were more, they were geared more towards earlier machines, but still fun, still really fun. Okay, well, anything else, Chris?
If anybody wants to contact us, give us more topic ideas, or tell us what they think about this one, or give us corrections, or praise and accolades, we would love that. We can be contacted on our Facebook page. Shit. What's the URL for that again?
For the Facebook page?
Yeah.
Why don't I know this? One sec. Wait, it's Fork Bomb. If you just look up Fork Bomb technology and other nerdy stuff, or you can just type in Fork Bomb, you'll find it. Fork Space Bomb, though. I don't know what'll happen if you put Fork Bomb together. Probably really will blow up.
Well, if
it came up.
If you are looking at this in a podcatcher, which you probably should be, the URL will be in the show notes. You can also email us at forkbombpodcast@gmail.com. We are also on Twitter at forkbombpodcast, and our website is forkbomb.podbean.com. You can leave comments there too.
All right, Chris. Well, it was good talking to you.
Good talking to you too. This one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was great. We need more of these.
And apologies for all the noise. The neighbors decided this was the best time to have their party, and so they've been blasting music this entire time. So
I didn't hear anything, but I'm sure it'll show up on the
yep
on the yeah.
This will be a fun
on the podcast. All right, Chris. Well, you have a good one.
You too, Euro. Good night.
Good night.